Why is it that he blows up every time I share my feelings? What if I told you his overreactions have nothing to do with what you're saying and everything to do with something else that maybe you haven't considered? If you're asking yourself, why does he react like that when I just want to talk? Maybe you've even thought, am I saying the wrong thing? Is it me? Well, you're not alone. So many women go through this exact same thing. I have gone through this exact same thing. It's confusing, frustrating, and frankly, exhausting. But here's the kicker. His reactions, they're not really about you or what you're sharing. There's a deeper reason behind it, something that's triggering him that you might not even realize. And once you understand what's really going on, it can change everything about the way that you communicate with one another. So let's dig in and figure out what's really happening and how you can shift the dynamic. This is going to get eye-opening. All right, let's start with the elephant in the room. You have probably felt like no matter how gently or how carefully you bring up your feelings, he still flips out. And it's frustrating because you're just trying to talk. All right, here's the thing. His overreactions, they've got nothing to do with what you're actually saying and everything to do with something else completely. Once you figure out what that something is, you'll not only understand his behavior better, but also know how to handle it in a way that leads to productive conversations instead of blow-ups. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll have a pretty clear idea of what's really going on, why his reactions seem so over the top, and most importantly, what you can do to shift the dynamic. Now, I know some of you are thinking, okay, but what could possibly be triggering him? I mean, it's not like I'm yelling or I'm accusing him. And that's exactly it. This has less to do with your delivery and more to do with what's going on inside of him. I've worked with countless women who have experienced this exact scenario. They are calm, composed, and expressing themselves maturely, yet their partners lose it. So what's the deal? Well, let me hit you with a fact. Studies show that nearly 70% of men report feeling attacked when their partner shares feelings, even if what's actually being said isn't critical. Yep, you heard that right. 70% of men. Now, I'm not saying all men are walking around with fragile egos. Maybe a little. But what's really happening here is that your emotions are triggering something deeper in him. It could be past trauma, feelings of inadequacy, or just a lack of emotional tools and the ability to handle vulnerability. So let's break this down with a real life example. One of my clients, Sarah, she was constantly walking on eggshells. Every time she tried to talk about her needs, her husband would shut down, or he would blow up, and she was looking for an emotional connection. She was yearning for an emotional connection. She tried setting aside time when the kids went to bed. She scheduled date nights. She made coffee Sunday morning, but all of her attempts at opening up the lines of communication seemed to fail. And it ended up in her crying, or him yelling, or doors slamming. And she started to believe she was the problem, like maybe she was being too needy. But the truth, he wasn't equipped to process emotions like that because it hit too close to his own insecurities. When she needed something that he couldn't understand, he felt like he was being accused of failing to provide or unable to fix things. Now, maybe that sounds familiar to you. Sarah felt stuck. She was thinking, is this something I'm doing wrong? Am I saying things the wrong way? But the truth is, this reaction was rooted in his internal struggles, not in the way that she was communicating. And here's another nugget of proof. This isn't just a random couple's problem. Studies show that miscommunication like this is a top reason couples argue or relationships break down entirely. It's a universal issue, which means it's not just you. So now you're probably wondering, okay, but how do I fix this? What can I actually do? Don't worry, I've got you. Here's a clear, actionable path to start shifting this dynamic. Step 1, stop blaming yourself. First things first, stop blaming yourself. His reaction is not about you being too much or you being too emotional. So repeat after me, I am allowed to express my feelings. This is a key mindset shift. I mean, you can't approach this from a place of self-doubt or blame or worry. I am allowed to express my emotions. Step 2, recognize his triggers. The next thing to do is identify what triggers him. Now, I'm not saying you need to play therapist, but you can start to notice patterns. Does he overreact when you mention finances? Does it happen when you bring up something related to his role in the relationship? These are clues. For example, maybe every time you talk about how you're feeling unsupported, he reacts as if you're calling him a bad husband or a bad partner, even though that's not what you're doing. His overreaction is a defense mechanism because he's internalized that message before, maybe from childhood, maybe from past relationships, maybe from society. And the key is to recognize that it's not your feelings that are the problem. It's what your feelings trigger inside of him. Step 3, create a safe space for vulnerability, for sharing, and for listening. This might sound a little cheesy, a safe space, but it works. You gotta create a space where you both feel safe to be vulnerable. That doesn't mean tiptoeing around his emotions, but rather opening up a conversation with curiosity instead of criticism. Creating a space where you both feel comfortable. Instead of saying, "You always blow up when I try to talk," try saying something like, "I've noticed that when I share how I'm feeling, it seems to upset you. Can we talk about what's going on for you in those moments?" Now, this kind of phrasing shifts the conversation away from blame into understanding and curiosity. And listen, he might not know the answer right away. He might not understand or be able to respond to this new way of communication. But just starting that conversation without accusation can go a very long way. Step 4, set boundaries and expectations with a focus on what you need and using I statements. But let's be clear, creating a safe space doesn't mean letting him get away with explosive behavior. You need to set boundaries. If his overreactions make you feel unsafe or unheard, that's not okay. Be clear about your expectations for how you want to be treated during these conversations. You could say, "I want to have a conversation where we can both share our feelings, but it's really important to me that we both stay calm and that we're both respectful and that we listen to each other and that we wait till the other one's done speaking. Can we agree on that?" And if he says yes, go ahead. Step 5, address the real issue together. The final step is the hardest, but it is the most impactful. Address the underlying issue together. Once you both acknowledge that his overreactions are linked to something deeper, it's time to tackle that. Just bring it out into the open. That might mean therapy or coaching, or simply having ongoing conversations together about how to improve your communication in a kind, loving, respectful way. This isn't a one-time fix, but over time, if you approach it together, you can start to change the way you interact in emotional conversations. So there you have it. His overreactions aren't about you or are not about your emotions. They're about something inside of him. And now that you know what's really going on, you have the power to shift the dynamic. Remember, it's not about tiptoeing around his feelings, but about understanding and being curious about why he's reacting this way, and then taking steps to create a healthier way to communicate. You've got this. If you're ready to stop second guessing yourself and start living with purpose, don't miss my video, Stop Overthinking and Start Growing. It's packed with tools to help you crush fear and step into your true potential. It's time to fuel that growth. Go watch it now and take that first step towards your best life. See you there.